Oh man, that's awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited. All right, perfect. So I think we are going to get started now. It looks like people are coming on right now. So I'll get things started, and as people stream in, we'll have them join as it comes. All right. So
Okay, and I'm going to mute.
Perfect, Dad.
Wait.
I'd like to cordially welcome everyone to the Smart Cities Showcase. Really excited to have you guys here. There should be some really exciting companies that we're all going to look at today. And so today's agenda right now is my 10 minutes of glory. I'm having my opening remarks. I have a captive audience for the opening remarks, and then from 1:10 Eastern time on to 4 o'clock Eastern time, we're gonna have the pitches. We're dividing it into 2 sessions here. The first section is going to be focused around big data and AI, obviously, in relation to smart cities. And then the second session is going to be from 2:10 to 2 o'clock, focusing on efficiency. So our vision. You might say, hey, what is deep tech doing? Why are they doing this? What we are doing is we are trying to bring more deep tech to the market by leveraging the power of a community and an ecosystem. What happens is, and we see it a lot, is that there's fantastic technology out there that doesn't get as much exposure as it should. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we don't miss out on those opportunities. And, just because something isn't as well connected, if you don't necessarily have friends who are, part of Sequoia Capital, that your tech can still come to market and still get to where it needs to get. And even if you do have friends who are, managing partners at Sequoia Capital, you can still get a wider audience and talk to maybe some federal representatives, talk to some corporate stakeholders, and have a little bit of a mix there. And so we created an ecosystem for deep tech. And as you can see here, we have a mix. We have the startups who are usually, in this case, presenting. We have tech scouts, whether it be from government or corporates, so it can be private or public, as well as, lastly, investors. And then throughout the year, we have monthly events. This event, as I said, is a Smart Cities event. Next month, we have a third wave of AI event, so stay tuned for that. And the goal is to make connections. So if you guys have a question, should I connect with them? Should I send them a message? Should I not send them a message? The answer is always yes. Definitely, this is a goal. The goal is to network and have networking happening. And then the other piece we do is we do guided introductions. And what that really means is that someone might come to us and say, hey, I need help cleaning debris off of a runway autonomously. And we'll say, hey, we have a few companies that do that. Check them out. Or we might say, hey, we have no companies that do that, but here's some companies that are in a similar field that might be able to extend their capabilities to doing that. And then in between events, people can make connections. So we send out decks and we make sure that, people aren't missing out on the newest deep tech that's out there. So here's our calendar. As you can see, we're in May. I'm doing the Smart Cities event right now. The next event is the third wave of AI, followed by aerospace and defense, and then the list goes on. I believe June 30th is a typo. I believe it's June 28th. I think the slide is from a little bit earlier before we moved it. So if you guys do intend on coming, it's June 28th. And then here's a little bit of the team. You can see me front and center, but we do have quite a big team and it is growing. And so that is what we are showing here. Next up, Deep Tech Crossing. That is Deep Tech Showcase is part of the Deep Tech Crossing, which is a business development firm that focuses almost completely on deep tech and helping deep tech. As we mentioned, our goal is to help deep tech come to market. And so we're focused on traction. So it's not just, consulting or saying, hey, your product is X and you need to be Y. But we focus quite a bit on SBIRs and BAAs, as well as other R&D mechanisms, pilot contracts, fundraising, which means helping with investment. And recently we've been doing more to help companies come into initial sales. And then the next thing we want to talk about is a somewhat new initiative. It's almost old now. It's called the MOU Club. The MOU Club is essentially a matchmaking service between startups that need an MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding, in order to work with the Air Force and Air Force end customers, end users. So basically, we run this program as an acceleration program to play that matchmaking and help them, because in order to win I think it's going to be the next slide, but in order to win an AFWERX Phase 2 or a direct to Phase 2, which is an Air Force grant mechanism, you need to have an Air Force customer lined up, which is easier said than done. So we help a lot with that. Just a program overview, just so everyone here knows in case they're interested. We're starting on June 1st, and it's going to finish up on August 9th when the submission is due. And it's a really exciting program. But essentially, it's built for the deep tech startups trying to get that pilot contract through the SBIR offices as well as AFWERX. And I think I got ahead of myself earlier, but I'm going to be a little bit repetitive. I hope you all forgive me. AFWERX funds startups that are developing technologies that could potentially be used by the Air Force. And the goal of it is to fund riskier technologies that might have a longer runway to market, in order to make sure that even though they're a little bit riskier and there's a little bit more of a gamble, that they're still able to come to market and that they're able to help an Air Force end user. So as I said before, you have to apply first, and then you get a Phase 1, which is now $75,000. Previously it was $50,000. After you get the Phase 1, you have a period of time in which you could get a memorandum of understanding from an Air Force end user. Once you get that memorandum from an Air Force end user saying, hey, we're interested in this tech, it's not a hard commitment, but it's saying, hey, we're interested in this tech and we'd be willing to look at it in the future. A Phase 2 is usually $750,000, or if it's a direct to Phase 2, it's $1.25 million. And that money is going to develop a prototype. So their goal is to have the companies that they're working with develop a prototype. Next up, we have Phase 2B, which is TACFI and StratFi. TACFI and StratFi are a really unique program, and if anyone's interested in it, they can feel free to talk to us about it. But it's essentially a match funding program to help in between the Phase 2 and Phase 3. It's up to $60 million in order to help the continuation of the development of a prototype. And basically, an investor could give $1 and the Air Force will give $1. For StratFi, an investor can give $1 and the Air Force and another government entity, which could also be the Air Force, gives $1 each. We could talk about that more in depth as we go. But lastly, Phase 3, or getting an Air Force customer and delivering a final product to a Tier 1 customer. So through this program, our goal is to help you get an MOU from an Air Force stakeholder. And the second piece is, once we get that MOU, you can submit directly to a Phase 2 and be eligible for $1.25 million in funding. And potentially, if you don't get the MOU, we can still work on the Phase 1 submission. And this will allow you to have future access to TACFI as well as StratFi. I went over this a little bit before, but starting as soon as possible, we begin talking to stakeholders, because there's a window in which you got to make this happen, and that window ends August 9th. The expectations is that this isn't easy, but it's something that's worthwhile, because even finding the market, identifying the market, and understanding who in the Air Force is your target end user is invaluable information for most companies. We have cohort sessions, we have one-on-one meetings, as well as showcases like this one to help out. And this is the program timeline. And we can send out this deck for anyone who's more curious afterwards. And again, we help with guided introductions to the ecosystem. And on June 22nd, there's going to be an event specifically for Air Force stakeholders. and companies to kind of meet and greet, get to know each other. So that's the event, and that's some of the panelists from our last AFWER showcase. And now on to today's panelists. We have quite a few of them here. I'm going to introduce you guys. I can introduce you guys now, actually. So on the call right now, I think we already have Anne. Anne, you wanna say hi and tell us a little bit about yourself? Give us a quick 1-minute introduction.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you to Asher and the Deep Tech Showcase team for pulling us all together for a very valuable and hopefully productive session that we'll have today. I'm here as the head of humanity health for a $3.5 billion publicly traded company called Splunk, traded on the NASDAQ. We just had our awesome earnings announcement last night if you want to take a look at what we're doing and all about. And we have a very large 2,000 plus partner ecosystem. It's a very easy lift if any and all of you are interested in exploring more about our Technology Alliance Partner Program. Happy to discuss that. Super excited to learn and hear the various pitches on everything smart cities related, which to me includes mobility, economy, environment, and the health. Thank you, Asher, for inviting me here today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Next up, John Lee. You want to just give us a quick 1 minute?
Thanks, Asher. Hello, everyone. John Lee, partner at Octave Ventures. Background, I was a contracting officer at NAVSEA headquarters, buying submarine systems, sonar systems, counter IEDs for CENTCOM, and NATO Sea Sparrow missiles and some energy systems. And then became head of government contracts at Palantir. Helped to increase their annual revenue from 80 to 400 million over my 3 years there. And then was a board of director and founder of the US office for a company called Improbable after they raised 500 million in Series B funding from SoftBank. Series A was led by Andreessen for 40. And then at Octave Ventures, a typical check size, we tend to be kind of in that stage where everything's clicked and they're ready to grow and they need the capital. So usually late Series A, B, C is kind of where we are. Typical check size between 5 to 50 million, looking at deep technology companies, biotech and pharma tech. Great to meet everyone.
Great to meet you too. Thank you, John. Next up, John Jung.
Hi, everyone. This is John. I'm a partner with Coda Capital. We're a San Francisco-based VC with about 70 early-stage companies. We typically invest in, I'd call fintech, bio, therapeutics, as well as the original, which is really enterprise. And we also do some public investing as well. I'm also president of Energy Vault, which is a publicly traded company on long duration energy storage. And prior to that, I was founder and CEO of Greensmith Energy, which I think in 2016 did about a third of the total megawatts and megawatt hours in the United States of energy storage, and was bought in 2017 by Wärtsilä, which is a very old Finnish company. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. All right, next up, Gus Domo.
Hey guys, Gus here. Kind of quick background on myself. So I'm on the investment team at Boost VC. We're a deep tech fund. We call it sci-fi tech, but generally a deep tech fund here in the Bay Area. And we like to invest at the earliest stage. We like to kind of lead the first institutional rounds as part of our investment. And then I myself come from a deep tech background. I'm kind of a deep tech generalist myself. I formerly was working at a deep tech startup and kind of helping build that, and former founder myself, as well as previously did my PhD at Harvard and postdoc at Stanford in various kind of deep technologies. So yeah, just kind of a deep tech generalist across the board.
Thank you, Gus. Thank you for being here. Next from Walmart, we have Anna Jarman.
Hi, here from Walmart Technologies. We are the internal technology development arm of Walmart Inc. We do a little bit of everything, including energy. As somebody mentioned, being one of the largest energy storage savers. So I think we might be the second largest energy consumer in the US currently. And right now, Walmart has about 15,000 software developers, analysts, and others on staff learning how to do a lot of things that we used to outsource now internally, but we're still always looking to collaborate and actually do quite a bit of M&A. So.
Thank you so much for being here. Next up, we have Ed Labrador.
Hi, Ed Labrador, Edmond, Oklahoma. 36 years total in the Air Force. I had an opportunity to command 3 squadrons and the Force's large commodities maintenance group here at Tinker Air Force. I'm currently principal innovator for Inventive Solutions. My job is helping Deep Tech with finding MOU clients in the Air Force. And I have a wonderful group of friends spread across the Air Force in critical places, especially since today's topic is big data and AI. I'm currently working with the National Security Collaboration Center at the University of Texas at San Antonio. So I'll be able to help identify some opportunities for MOU clients. Really looking forward to hearing the pitches today. Thanks.
Perfect. Happy to have you. I don't think Don is here unless I'm making a mistake. If you're here, raise your hand and let me know, because I don't see you. But I think, and Harry Meyer, just so everyone knows, it's unfortunate, but he had a medical issue that came up, so he's also not available. But last but definitely not least, we have Leland Holcomb.
Thanks, Asher. Pleasure to be here. My name is Leland. I'm the Director of Business Development focused on technology for Advanced CT. That's Advanced Connecticut. We're basically the state of Connecticut's economic development arm. So we work with companies coming into the state. The state has a lot of developments going on in community development that are interesting, but I also work with technology companies across the board to bring them to the state. Additionally, I also work, I have a micro VC fund that does insurtech and fintech investment at the seed and series A levels and pre-seed levels even. Because my background's more in insurtech and fintech investment. But a pleasure to be here today and looking forward to hearing all the companies.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. All right, and here we have the companies. We're going to start off actually not in order, but I believe with Stream It, and then we're going to go totally out of order, but I'm not sure if I'm going to get the order right, but it's Algometric, Raycom, and Lattice Industries. And then we'll save the second panel for when that comes up. But the first company that we are going to have present, if they are ready now, is going to be Stream It. And from Stream It, Bill French will be presenting. So the floor is all yours when you're ready, Bill.
Okay, thanks, Asher. Let's see. Let's make sure I get this shared. Hopefully you're seeing my slide.
I'm seeing it, but I'm also
all good.
Good. Yeah, so smart cities, wow. Stream It is not a smart cities company. We're not experts in smart cities, but we have a lot of observations that we'd like to make concerning this topic. And, you know, I noticed somebody in the chat session said, I thought this was about smart cities. And, you know, my reaction to that is, if it is, we're going to be talking about a lot of failures. Because essentially, if we look back now, since it's been a little over a decade of smart city activity, you know, around the globe, we see that Cisco, you know, failed. I mean, we'll just get that part out of the way. They've made a number of attempts. There's no shortage of articles on the web showing how they pretty much wasted a few $1 billion trying to do a top-down approach. You know, the concept of smart cities, of course, in a top-down architecture is to think about billions of smart devices. This is basically the IoT, you know, on steroids, covering a very wide area network. And there's problems with that. When you think of billions of anything that's electronics, you end up, you know, starting to create kind of a mess. And so it wasn't surprising to see companies like Cisco, and there's others. They're not the only ones that have made mistakes in the smart cities play. but billions of smart devices on a wide area network, what could go wrong with that? And of course, Cisco kind of proved it. They were the experts. I mean, from a smart city standpoint, they touted themselves as the experts. They knew the challenges, and they knew the right pathway to get there. And then over the last 10 years, we've come full circle and tried to say, well, what can we salvage out of that effort? And if you go anywhere on the web right now, these are the 7 cities that will claim to be the smartest. I've been to New York a lot. I can't recall a single instance where I thought, wow, this is smart. Almost all aspects of these cities have their problems. Of course, Singapore they may have some exceptions, but most of the cities that we visit, they don't really demonstrate any kind of a serious play in terms of smart city advantages. And so we have to try to understand, well, why is a top-down approach, or why is a command and control approach to smartness failing in most cases? In a related story, a little bit of levity here, smart beds are not doing that well either. In fact, Memorial Day has a clearance sale on most smart beds. So if you're looking to make a smart bed, now is probably the time to invest in that, because they're pretty cheap. But this does, underscore the idea that making everything smart, just because we can do it, and just because we have IoT devices, doesn't necessarily make it a great idea. One thing that I noticed in all of my readings, all of our studies at Streamit, we play a lot with AI, and we think that AI has, a number of different ways to create and enhance intelligence, intelligence about human behavior, et cetera. But at the end of the day, what I saw in most of the city projects since about 2014, that the ends to the means was not matching, the technology. And so when we say, well, it's a smart city, is it about sustainability? Is it about safety? Is it, about reducing pollution? All of these are predicates that really need to be factored in to any kind of a claim that you're going to solve a problem or get there. I mean, it's pretty obvious that if you put an IoT sensor on every garbage can, that's going to be really cool, and you're going to have some interesting data, but someone still has to come get the trash. So these environments that attempt to shape a cleaner, safer, more efficient world that we live in, they have to factor in people. And it's my conclusion that, IoT sensors, they have almost zero chance of making a city smart. In fact, they actually probably have the capacity to make them a little less intelligent. The idea that everything in a city is going to be IoT enabled is a fallacy. This valve is not going to be replaced. It's under a CapEx program that's probably 25 years, possibly 50 years. And so there are realities of cities and infrastructure that are simply not going to be IP enabled for a long time. And so what's the answer? I mean, how do you get information and data from infrastructure that is old and probably going to stay old for a long time? And I think the answer is very simply, it's the Internet of Recognition, not the Internet of Things. This suggests that we are going to—
Can everyone go on mute? There's an echo. Thank you.
Sorry about that. The Internet of Recognition, I think, has this vast capacity to see and understand everything that goes on within a city, anywhere, any place. We've come to realize this. Tesla abandoned, radar as its vision technology for good reason, and I think they went to machine vision because most of the infrastructure that we've created as a society, a global society, for a long time has been based on humans using those infrastructure pieces. So roadways were designed for people with 2 eyes. That kind of a model is not going to change. And of course, the answer is vision. But vision brings with it another dimension that I'll observe, and that is the concept of a virtualized IoT sensor. When you think of IoT sensors, they're manufactured typically for one purpose, and they're almost binary in nature. They either tell you that something is failing or something is succeeding. Something is occupied, something is not occupied. Vision has the capacity to create virtualized IoT sensors, which means a given camera has the capacity to actually include many different sensors. So, any given camera could do things like this. Obviously, we could take turnstiles at New York's MTA, and we could retrofit them with IoT sensors to detect fare evaders. But a smarter way to do it is to simply put one camera, one vision sensor on that, and then use the heuristics of human pose to understand
1 minute
who is
warning.
evading this environment, who is trying to jump over the turnstiles and do things like that. And so that's a good example of taking a vision sensor and making it, at least into one dimension, a far better environment. At StreamIt, we also think about seeing the unseeable. There's cases where, you might want to count the number of people in an HOV lane in each vehicle. That's kind of a compliance issue for a city. And they're not very smart about it because they typically put people out on highways, and out on highways, they're designed to simply sit there and count. Then they use averages and they try to get it right. But a simple vision sensor is capable of seeing some things that even humans can't see. And a lot of people look at this and say, oh, wow, that's, during the daylight. How does it run at night? Actually, it runs better at night. And so here's a case where, not only have we seen 3 individuals in this vehicle, we've also said, well, this is an ear and a cheek, but it is, in fact, a human worth at least counting in that sense. So my final observation is that when cities become smart, you won't know it. It's no different than how smart we become when we're using an app like Waze. Waze it expands our capacity for intelligence, and it does so without us even knowing it. We know where there are, traffic jams. We know where there are different routing. Those kinds of bottom-up approaches seem to make a lot of sense. And I think you'll know when a city is smart because your life will simply get better. And one last comment, who do you bet on, on the smart city side? Let's take a couple of metaphors. We'll back up and we'll say, one of the products that StreamIt is working on is Cyberlander. That's the thing that's in the back of the Cybertruck. We looked high and low for an organization that could build our Cyberlander camper. Couldn't find it. Elon did the same with automotive. He tried to get OEMs to build the best electric vehicles. Couldn't do it. And I think smart cities the same way. We're not going to see any company dedicated to the concept of smart cities. They're going to be dedicated to things that are very different. Anyway, so that's my final comment on that, and I'm ready for Q&A if anybody has any questions.
Sure. Now, before for questions, I just want to remind the panelists to please keep your videos on and be active, ask questions. What we'll do is, if you want to raise your hand, we'll go in and raise the order.
I guess I can jump in and ask a question then. Can you tell us a little bit about, the projects that you're working on now, some of the traction that your company's had, and some example cities you're working with, or other use cases? Yeah, obviously you showed a few there of how the tech can be leveraged, but maybe you can go a little bit further into where your company is in terms of working with different cities now.
We're working currently with a state and using it to analyze traffic activity. One of the biggest questions they have is, are the people riding in HOV lanes compliant? And the answer is vastly no. And in fact, we can identify the triggers that cause them to be less compliant. There are certainly times during the day where there's no incentive to hop into an HOV lane with one individual on board. And so we've been able to pinpoint those times. That was always kind of theoretical in their minds, but the DOT for this particular state was really gratified to see that we know exactly when people are incentivized to enter and leave a lane as well. So we're using analytics to also see when are they violating double white line situations, as well as trying to compute, the average occupancy of any vehicle traveling in the HOV lanes. But we take it another level, even when we have to do any kind of estimate.
About our work in Los Angeles County as well, with the transit agency that wanted live video with real-time analytics streaming from their buses, so they could know how many people were on board, where they got on and off, what the speed was, the temperature, if the bus driver is driving smoothly, providing two-factor authentication for the driver, because most people don't know. You can get on any bus in the world and drive it into a crowd of people or into a building because they don't have ignition keys. So this particular transit agency wanted to have the same badge that lets them in and out of their buildings control the buses, and then audit it by having it take a picture when that badge was scanned. So we've done some work like that. Our approach is very different. We think the result of a smart city is you should have situational awareness, not simply a bunch of interconnected devices that produce reports that nobody looks at. The end result should be, what's happening in your city and you can better manage it in real time. And so whether that is an active shooter situation or just the daily traffic, it's a very different approach. And so we're using those sensors, and they can be the sensors that are already existing around them. The video cameras they already have, like that sample Bill showed of New York MTA's train stations. They searched the world over for a way to tell if somebody was evading fares. They found one company in Europe that with this specialized camera above each and every turnstile, it could detect with okay accuracy if somebody had evaded a fare. They asked if there was a better way, and in under 2 weeks, Bill had created a solution that used the camera they had on the wall to look at up to a half a dozen turnstiles at a time of all different types, and very accurately tell if somebody had gone under, over, or jimmied their way through it. So our approach is different. We do AI at the edge. In the stream, as the data crosses the network, we're in the data center. It's all tied into a real-time analytics network that gives you a real-time stream. So you can alert on that person who's evading the fare and allow the police officer on the platform to know in about 1 second, along with their photo, that just happened. So it's a very different approach. Cisco tried to do a low-hanging fruit approach. Let's connect together all these already networked devices. And it failed miserably when they tried to go up to the next level. And then that failed when they tried to go to the next level. So after 3 efforts, they threw in the towel and gave up. We did just the opposite. We said, let's start at the very toughest thing to do. Let's make something that's infinitely scalable. So that if New York came to us and said, we want our city smart, how would you do it? Our view is if you don't have your police body cameras, your trains, your buses, and all of those things tied in as well, you're not a smart city because you're blind to everything that's happening right now. So we started with the hardest thing to do, streaming 10 video streams of HD video off a bus with real-time analytics, with passenger detection, weapons detection, those types of things. If you can make that work, connecting intersections together is a piece of cake. So we start at the opposite end and work backwards.
Just in the interest of time, I want to get to all the questions. So Anne and then Anna, really quick if we can.
Yeah, great. Hey, thank you so much, Bill and Lance. Great presentation there. Maybe just a real quick thought and discussion about your enterprise architecture as it relates to persistent threat vulnerabilities in any and all of these devices, as well as you're collecting real-time analytics. How are you making sure that none of that data is in any way, shape, or form compromised? Thank you.
Thank you. So I am not the cybersecurity expert. We have one on staff, and he could address that lots better than I could. But we believe in designing from the ground up the security into it. There's nothing that's perfectly secure. It's always a constant battle because everything's always changing. They're constantly finding new vulnerabilities. but we make sure that all data is encrypted from end to end and at rest to help make that safer. And there are a lot of other techniques we use, some of which we discuss, others we don't. I hope that helps a little bit. If you'd like a deeper dive, we'll be happy to do a deeper dive on that for you.
All right, Anna, ask away.
Yeah, so when you're talking about the number of people in a car in an HOV lane, I can help but think of one of the problems that we've had in our stores, and I would imagine a lot of other retailers or malls or parking lots, is people leaving their children or pets in the car while they go inside, and it basically, when the car heats up, it can kill the child, or in a lot of cases, something like a puppy. So I was wondering if anybody has ever talked to you about that kind of use case, because it sounds like it would be a perfect fit and a life-saving fit, maybe better than tickets.
Sorry, yeah, nobody's talked to us about that yet. You know, that's a great thing. Obviously, very related technology to what we're doing with the HOV lane. The challenge you would have in a parking lot is having the right angle to view into the vehicles to see if somebody's inside or not. But if you can get those types of views without having cameras that are exposed to a lot of vandalism, then that's, you know, eminently possible.
Yeah, I think it's clearly a possibility. One way to get a little bit more data would be to analyze every vehicle as it enters the parking lot, and then determine who has left the vehicle. So if you have a vehicle that comes in and you get all the angles when it enters, then you can know that there's 2 children in the back seat and 1 adult in the front. And then if you observe then that 1 adult exits the vehicle, which is very easy to determine, now you have a mismatch. You have some kind of a mismatch impedance. And so the system could be smart enough to then put 2 and 2 together, as it were, and say, no, there's unattended children in this vehicle. Simple as that. We do have capacity to look at faces and understand gender and age, so that it tends to help in those kinds of circumstances. So, you know, a 15-year-old in the backseat of a car is very different than a 5-year-old.
Okay, Bill, we're gonna have to move forward.
Understood.
I'm sorry, John, feel free to ask them in the chat or to chat them directly. Next up, we have Lattice Industries, and presenting for Lattice Industries is Jen Schmitz.
All right. Okay, and Brian is running my slides. So, okay. All right, can everyone hear me?
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so hello, I am Jennifer Schmitz. I am the CEO of Lattice Industries. So I'd like to thank you all of Deep Tech Showcase for having me here today. I'm going to go through something we've been working on at Lattice Industries. It's called Planting the Seed, and it talks about deploying a system, both a hardware and a software system. After our research for about 4 years, we started in 2018 and kind of came up with this system based on our expertise, which is from very large global data networks around the globe. So with that, I'm going to slide 2. Okay. As I mentioned, our name is Lattice Industries. We're a Wilmington, Delaware-based company, woman-owned. I am the largest owner in our company, so thus woman-owned. We have come up with what we are calling the Agnostic Interchange Management System, specifically as an informational exchange system for institutional players that can also bring regional benefit and also connectivity to areas in which it's deployed. So we've also created a methodology to deploy this system, which is very similar to our backgrounds. My team is formerly comes from mostly from Visa. We have a very deep understanding of problems on the operational side when dealing with big data. So we've gone out to try to help our government and military partners basically use best practices that we've learned and develop a system that can help integrate their decentralized systems efficiently so they can get to a real-time data share situation. Okay. Brian, next step. Okay, so what did we actually design? We're actually taking where we know that systems exist all throughout both governments and militaries that are existing in silos. So what we wanted to do is really take something and really give it to the 5 main points that have to occur in any connected backbone for any system. So all the IoT out there we're talking about, all the smart city, all those elements are the same, whether it's a military, a government, a city. They have to have a backbone that's actually going to provide governance, commodifying those digital assets for the partners, centralizing the exchange transactions in a very efficient way. So not just smart contracts, but also understanding the liability shifts that have to occur. The third thing is to take that opportunity, create a system where we can also mutualize the data management expenses, the connectivity expenses that all the partners and the participants have to pay for right now, but seeing if we can actually commodify that and centralize those analytic services, those AI services, those deep science services in one centralized place to not only maximize the information, but also maximize the expense or opportunity to minimize the expense, excuse me. With that, we also intend to build a system that'll help mitigate what we know to be threats. Any type of multi-party sharing has its risks, and our most important step in any design that we make is to reduce risk in a multi-party setting. So that's what we do, and we want to create a facilitation system that helps drive new solutions that can get people to build those solutions for those big data-driven techniques that they use in their AI. Next slide. Okay, so what is AIMS? AIMS is what we're calling just the platform, but we have actually encompassed everything that we believe is needed to actually be an efficient backbone to a smart city or a smart regional platform. So it's the governance, as I mentioned, it's going to incorporate some data services, but basically it's an operational network hub node that can actually act as a command center, as well as offer new systems and new governance for members that would choose to use the network. Next slide. Now, what does that mean? What's the difference? There's smart contracts, there's data exchanges out there. We've actually modeled what we believe to be what was missing in those data exchange systems. All over the United States, all over the globe, they're talking about data exchange for OEMs, V2V, V2I information. But in reality, they're not actually attacking what we call true counterparty risk. True counterparty risk, there's a liability shift. In fact, you know, I used to work for Visa. So between your banks and your merchants, like a Walmart and a Chase Bank, there is a huge liability shift on every transaction. That doesn't exist in smart contracts. There's just a financial, but no one talks about if there's bad information in there, if the terms of the contract are actually not correct, or if there was an injection of malinformation inside that for basically malicious use. Who do we come back to? Right now, as it exists, and there is not what we call centralized governance. And so that's where industry members have to come together to make what we call a commodified contract. And we've designed a contract that can go through our system that actually helps to connect the information from different blockchains and brings them together in an efficient way to be transmitted quickly, faster than blockchains transmit at about 680 transactions per second. We can get up to what is more like a payment system, about 1700. Next slide. Now that's nice if we're going to build this, but most investors that we go and do this for, after we build it, they'd like to see that it's actually mutualizing services, or there's some sort of an income stream that can be generated out of this operational entity. So what we do is actually work very similar to other multi-member networks. For instance, like a commodity exchange, you'll see very similar services and products, same as payment or credit card networks that do that. But basically, when you connect information, you create new information. And a lot of that's very important to people, and a lot of the same people have to pay for the same services. So what we do is we combine into a one-stop shop, and you can get it in one AIMS platform. Next slide. Okay, so sometimes they're hardware, sometimes they're software, but ultimately what we build is a neutral operator and an agnostic source for that information. And so that allows the command center to run an entire network, whether that's on a base or in a smart city. Next slide. What exactly does that mean? Well, the technology in a smart city, basically all the things on the right, can actually be brought into a system and provide services from those connectivities and within a city. And so on the left-hand side are some of the services that a one-stop shop node would actually incorporate for the regional participants. All right, now you have the operational entity. What does that really mean? So let's talk brass tacks and smart cities. Smart cities don't exist because there are no smart cities and there's nobody who's going to invest in something that's not smart. This is the basic reason why. Nothing's connected in a smart city where they have a brain. And what we're trying to do is actually create the brain and a true network that's interconnectable. To do that, we've looked to the traditional infrastructure players and how do they actually fund infrastructure? What they actually do is they partner with an entity, such as a city, a jurisdiction, some form of entity that's public, and they can actually be financed through different vehicles that can help finance that out into a phase 3, which is exactly how we also intend to commercialize our products, both through what we hope to be the military, as well as some of the jurisdictions we're dealing with. Once they do that, other investment entities come in, like P3 operators, and they'll help to underwrite that operational entity for in and of itself. Very similar to tollway operators that can build the tollway, but then leave an operational entity to actually create revenue that's self-sustaining and therefore investable.
Let's start wrapping up, all right?
Okay. And what happens when you do that? Well, if you create things that are interconnectable, you can actually create a national system based on standards and interoperability, very similar to global networks are and many other avenues. And I think our final slide, right? Okay, so where are we now? Well, we are in the middle of executing on our demonstration grant for the city of Wilmington, Delaware. We have also, we've actually gotten an MOU from one of the Air Force bases to work with their systems. And so we're progressing on in our year now that we're developing, but basically we intend to go out and start planting seeds. And I believe that kind of sums us up there, Brian.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. And it looks like Gus already has a question. So we're going to cut the Q&A. Gus, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks for the talk there. Really appreciate it. It's interesting. You're kind of building out the way you said brain. I thought was an interesting kind of analogy for this, like all the infrastructure you're building out. I have a two-part question because also we just glossed over that last slide. So I guess my first question is, there's a lot that can be done with this and a lot of different important applications with this. So first, I'm curious, what's your current focus right now in building this out? And two, where do you think will be the longest term impact on having something like this built out? So kind of the short term, but also the long term, if that makes sense.
Okay. Actually, it's a two for one answer. Okay. So right now we're working with Wilmington, Delaware, focused on an East Side neighborhood that's got very underserved and unserved communities for high-speed broadband. So what our network is a combination. Our software is great, but what we learned over 4 years is that you actually have to help them deploy something to start with. So that's actually incorporating what we're deploying as of this month. It will incorporate a WISP, which is Wi-Fi Internet Service Provider, a WESP, we're calling it a Wi-Fi Edge Net Service Provider, a co-location services for members, and then an institutional data exchange in one entity. Now that's going to be a demonstration project in Wilmington that our part 2 is to actually incorporate, and we're working with the city right now, ideally to get us some ideal property, but to incorporate all of that into what we're calling a micro tier 4 data center that can be 3D printed.
Gotcha.
And then it's like and we call it a smart city in a box, but ideally everything that we have, including our software servers, everything is going to be incorporated into something like a 25 rack 3D printed tier 4 cool. Secure entity that we can actually use as an entity operating, doing services for the city that sets it up appropriately, then to become an investable asset.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you.
Perfect. Go ahead.
That was for me, Asher.
You're up.
Okay, thank you. And good afternoon, Jen. Great job. Thank you so much. And also for woman leadership there. Excellent. 2 questions, if I may. One, what are you sensing in terms of the appetite and the educational level of understanding and appreciation of blockchains in the federal sector space? And also, sorry, just a second, if I have a chance to ask a second, what does your TAM look like? Thanks.
Okay, so just keep me on track because when I start talking, I tend to go off on my appetite portion. So there's appetite on all sides of the marketplace. So for the last 4 years, including over COVID, I've been working with the traditional infrastructure guys with our federal government to actually say that part of that infrastructure is digital infrastructure. And if you don't start it off with digital infrastructure, you're not going to be able to do infrastructure properly. So as we've taught that for the last 4 years, and we've talked to cities and governments, this entire concept was bred from demand. And the demand really came down from the mayors and the governors. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to start. And now they know that they've wasted budgets. So they're expecting some federal money, but I think unfortunately what they've seen is it's not enough to complete the deal. There's no way they can do it, even with trillions that are being given out. The problem is how do they spend that appropriately? And the education portion is the greatest. So we go through actually telling them that we'd want to work with them for a cost study first so they can understand what their savings is to give them that model, but also it helps in the financial modeling part for the fintech element where we can actually use those same numbers to say, listen, you can invest in this because we're going to outsource these services on behalf of the city or the jurisdiction. But it is a very big appetite. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the cities, if you give them something to start with, they will know what to do. But right now, not many know where to start. And I think that's hurting all of us, actually.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jen. I think that's all we have time for here. Thank you for the presentation. Next up, presenting, we have Mike Reynolds. Let me allow you to share. And he is presenting for Raycom. Perfect. So unmute yourself and get your slides ready. Whenever you're ready, we'll begin.
Thank you, Asher. Brian, are you running the slide deck or would you like me to?
You can do it.
Okay, let me get it shared. Okay, thank you, Asher, for that warm welcome, and thank you to all our panelists for being here today and allowing us to present. My name is Michael Reynolds. I'm the founder and president of Raycom Innovations. We are based in Washington, but have customers across the country. So Raycom was founded with a singular vision to produce state-of-the-art technology to better equip organizations whose fundamental purpose is preserving life. What this means is our first responders and frontline response agencies need to have the best communications that we are capable of giving them. Some of the failure points in current technology, the biggest of which is lengthy and complicated deployment process, often requiring multiple individuals, which takes time away and delays communications from going out. It also ties up resources that could be better suited doing other things. And these systems are largely dependent on local infrastructure for operation, things like power, cellular access, internet connectivity. And they rely on antiquated systems with measurable shortcomings, line of sight issues, lack of remote access into the affected area. So we have come up with some products to try and close those communication gaps. The first of which is the Raycom Crisis Response System. We worked and collaborated with law enforcement for 1 year to produce a system that would operate wirelessly. It's been tested at ranges of 3/4 of a mile. But the primary function of this is to facilitate smooth and reliable communication between the negotiator and a subject. This communication allows for de-escalation of the situation and minimizes the need for use of force or lethal force. In a dual purpose role, this system can also be hard mounted in a facility or institution and convey vital information such as shelter in place or evacuate, any kind of urgent communications that need to go out. The second project I'd like to talk about is the Raycom Tactical Repeater. We were approached by a nonprofit that supports disaster response efforts with FEMA to produce a case that essentially had never been made before. We started with a UHF repeater modified it to function as a base station, allowing instant communications from the command center. We included a low-loss switching system that allows the repeater to operate on separate repeater pairs without additional equipment, just the twist of a knob and you have a net changeover. This allows greater interoperability between local, state, and federal responders. The other thing is transportability. We put this all in a standard carry-on roller bag, hard case, so it's easy to wheel through an airport and stow in the overhead bin, allowing for the equipment to travel with the intended end user. Finally, we included a battery system that allows the unit to operate for over 90 minutes without the need for generator power. This allows for instant communications while the command post is being still set up. We are finishing development of a satellite link system for this that will allow outside support personnel the ability to monitor the communications on the ground in the affected area, and also to pass vital information that may not be available to the first responders because of infrastructure being down. Some of the traction that we have completed contracts for the U.S. Air Force, one of which is pictured on the screen. This was the first successful integration of military hardware with civilian hardware. What we've done is integrated it and allowed the end user to have a small handheld LTE device with no line of sight issues and be able to monitor and transmit with base station power capabilities. We also work with public safety in the development of our systems and have a large presence in the aviation marketplace, including test flight and air shows. Our competitive advantages, as the meter shows here, we test every piece of equipment that comes out of our shop to ensure that it meets the highest quality standards in the industry. We are not satisfied until we have exceeded our customers' performance expectations. Our systems provide a measurable increase in reliability and functionality, and all the products are built with durability and increased life cycle in mind, allowing for seamless communication in the most demanding environments. Raycom is currently seeking seed money from investors to continue our company's growth. We would like to expand our lab's capabilities and provide operating capital to bring on additional engineers to further develop the technology. We are also interested in creating corporate and community partnerships, and we are actively recruiting for a chief financial officer. So I'd like to thank you. That's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. I think Anne was the fastest. So go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Great job there, and glad to hear about in particular, testing, the rigorous testing that you deploy before pushing those devices out. Are you familiar with Zebra Technologies?
I'm not familiar with Zebra.
Okay, check them out. $5.5 billion publicly traded company. One of the largest acquisitions they did recently was Motorola. Actually, if you're interested, Asher, I don't know how this works, but an opportunity with NYPD in partnership with them, and I'd love to get you involved and get your devices in front of that opportunity.
Sure, I'll connect you to that afterwards.
Yeah, well, I'd very much be interested in talking about that. That's sort of what we're looking for today.
You got it. Thank you.
Perfect. That's awesome. Next up, Deanna. I think you're still on mute.
Oh, yeah. So out of curiosity, what kind of, if any, restrictions do the nature of your existing contracts and customers put on something like a corporate partnership? Or what conflicts would you foresee due to having both government and thus publicly funded technology and then potentially private and proprietary?
Well, that's a good question. We don't really, the partners that we use are typically manufacturers of specific technology. What we do is push existing technology past its original design capabilities, and then combine it and integrate it with other cutting edge equipment to produce a finished product. So, the companies that we're partnered with are not in direct competition. There's no conflict there. As far as the funding goes, like I said, we are actively recruiting a chief financial officer to be able to address the financial side as far as publicly funded projects versus private commercially available things.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry, guys, I was muted. I believe we have time for one last question. Edwards, did you just raise your hand? We do have time for one last question if someone wants to take the last crack.
Mike, Ariel, and so I've copied down your.
Ed, we're having some sound problems. You're clipping in and out. Maybe stop the video stream.
Let's try. Okay.
There we go.
That a little bad, Mike?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Ariel had sent me a note yesterday on your company and asked me to follow up. So I will give you a call after this. Interested in talking to you about the Air Force use cases.
Yeah, we've done a few contracts and we're in negotiation right now with McCord Air Force Base and working the MOUs from the existing contracts we've completed as well as the new contracts. And I believe Fairchild Air Force Base is on deck after McCord. So I'd be very interested to speak with you after this.
Good. Thank you.
Yes.
Wonderful. Perfect. So that's all for Raycom. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you, Asher.
Absolutely. Next up, we have Algometric, and presenting for Algometric will be Greg Jones. Greg, I know you're on the call. I just think that you need to be promoted to panelist. So when you're ready and when you're on, feel free to begin.
There it is. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Thank you, Asher, and thank you for including us in this showcase. We appreciate it. Next slide. Our company, Algometrics, addresses the problems seen here in these angry headlines we have all seen. Next slide. Data breaches produce sobering statistics year after year, and now over a third of the data breaches involve company insiders. Next slide. Ransomware attacks doubled last year with nearly 20 ransomware attacks every second. That's every second. Next slide. And the failure to comply with privacy regulations has huge penalties, as we see in these headlines. Next slide. For 6 years, Algometrics was in research mode, working on new data-centric mathematical approaches to these very problems. This year, we're moving into the market with products. Next slide. And let's skip this technical slide and go to the next. Stork is our first product. According to NIST and many others, passwords are no longer good enough, and zero trust is essential. Zero trust means every request for network access, whether internal or external, must be authenticated. That's what Stork does. It is a dedicated identity and access management product, and according to Gartner, this type of product provides, quote, the discipline that enables the right individuals to access the right resources at the right times for the right reasons. Over the next few years, however, most requests for network access won't come from individuals, they will come from machines, mostly IoT devices. Bad actors use the vulnerabilities of these IoT devices to gain network access and steal your data or inject malware. When your data is stolen, you have the double whammy of the enterprise cost and the regulatory penalties. Just recall the penalties imposed by GDPR on small and large companies alike. We built Stork to have an industry-leading security for IoT. We keep the bad guys out. We built Stork to be lightweight so it's well suited for IoT networks where computation power may be limited. And we built Stork to be efficient. We have eliminated most of the hidden costs found in competing identity and access products. These are costs such as API calls and third-party certificates, and these costs can mount up quickly in large IoT ecosystems. Most importantly, Stork is built to be the front door to your network, whether it's a machine or an individual that's knocking. Next slide. And another quote from Gartner, data is the oil of the 21st century and analytics is the combustion engine. But not so fast. Personal information is what analytics wants the most, and this is the very information that is protected the most by regulations, such as HIPAA, GDPR, and many others. 5 minutes makes you talk pretty fast. It's a violation to hand over personal data to an outsider to perform analytics, and it's inconceivable for an analytics supplier to hand over their algorithms to data owners. So how do we get analytics done? How do we start that combustion engine? Obscura is our answer. Obscura enables high-performance, privacy-preserving computation over encrypted data. The data owner supplies the encrypted data to the analytics owner, but not the decryption key. The analytics owner performs the desired computation on this encrypted data and returns the results to the data owner who does have the encryption key. Unencrypted personal data never sees the light of day. This type of secure computation can be done either with fully homomorphic encryption or multi-party computation, and Algometric has patented practical solutions for both. To choose the best solution requires that you possess both solutions. Next. Ratel is the ransomware defense product. Typically, ransomware is when a malicious actor gains access to your network, encrypts all your content, and wants you to pay for the decryption key. In a nutshell, Ratel does the following. It takes your data, it randomizes shares of this data, and stores each share separately. None of these shares contain meaningful data. The original data can be reconstructed from these shares on demand with almost no latency. And as long as a majority of these multiple servers has not been hacked, the original data can still be reconstructed. You can laugh when the demand for ransomware payment arrives. Don't laugh now. Algometric, next slide, please. Algometric builds its products to be compliant with all relevant standards bodies, and several of these bodies have invited Algometrics to join their IoT security working groups. Next slide. All these three initial products from Algometric combine readily as a suite for protection from entrance to exit, or as a standalone plug-and-play solution, or for Stork as an access plugin for developers who want to avoid the pain of assuring compliance. This may be, in fact, Stork's largest market. Next slide. So where do we come from? Well, Algometric started off under the wing of Symmetrics Corporation. Symmetrics has been around for a while and has a track record of developing and licensing intellectual property to the semiconductor industry. It was a math that was used by Symmetrics to unravel certain quantum effects in semiconductors that provided our novel data-centric approach for cryptographic tools. Next slide, please. Algometric was founded in 2016 to research this novel approach, and Symmetrics funded this research until our first investors in 2020. This year, we received a second round of investment and are now preparing for the launch of 3 products starting in Q4.
Greg, 30-second warning.
Yeah. Next slide. Over the past 18 months, we've doubled the size of our research team, and we've formed a development team that has enjoyed past success together with it and is now hungry for products. This is a close-knit team, and for Algometric, it's undoubtedly our greatest resource. Next slide. So in Q2, Q2, this team will start with 2 use cases for Stork and Obscura to prepare for their Q4 product launch. Next slide. We are focused on getting these products out the door, but we are excited by ongoing development as well, development in areas such as data compression, 3rd generation AI, and quantum encryption. Next slide. So what are we looking for? Algometric's board and its investors want to see a successful launch of 1 or more products before another round of investment. In the meantime, we would appreciate your recommendations for strategic partners, as well as additional use cases. But most importantly, we'd like you to remember our name, Algometric. Thanks so much for your attention.
Perfect. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Greg. First up in terms of questions, we got Anne.
Hi, everyone. Greg, thank you again. Great presentation. And you're absolutely right. It does take a village, sounds like, and appears like you've got a great team there. In terms of your MVP and product market fit, could you share a little bit about who those potential pilots are being targeted to and with? What does your pipeline look like? What are we talking about? Have you done any pricing analysis, market analysis? Anything along those lines would be greatly appreciated. And then absolutely strategic partner, one that I would suggest selfishly, but for all the right reasons to consider would be Splunk. So feel free to reach out if I can help.
Thank you for the recommendation. Yeah. We have 2 use cases confirmed for both Obscura and Stork. Stork is the front end of the Obscura product. Both of the users want to be able to use personally identifiable information for analytics. And they have already customers in place that already use their services, but would like to have more granular information available from that information held by the debt management company. So we're preparing a report generator that operates over encrypted data. That the first use case is using multi-party computation in order to provide computation over encrypted data to provide these reports. We expect those to run for about 2 months so we can become a little bit wiser about being a supplier to the market. These are our first products, but we're very confident. We went to, the first customers are in Iceland. We went to these customers to get use cases for Stork because of good relationships we enjoyed there. But when we introduced Obscura, that started to dominate the conversations. So we're confident that we're on the right track with these products, both for the access control and the encrypting, operating on encrypted data. So we'll see. We have patents on both these approaches to secure computation over encrypted data.
Thanks, Greg. Perfect. We ran out of time here, but thank you so much for the presentation. And with that, we wrap up the big data and AI session. Any panelist that is here feel free to stay on for the efficiency session. And now I will introduce the panel for the efficiency session. Let me just throw up the slideshow, everyone. Bear with me. So, starting off, we have Kip Stringfellow from VU Ventures. Kip, if you're on and can speak, feel free to give a minute just to introduce yourself. So I think I saw him in the attendees. He might be as an attendee right now. Yeah, so I have to add Kip as a panelist. Kip, I'm going to add you as a panelist, and then we'll come back to you. Next, John Lee from Octave Ventures, if you want to reintroduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Asher. Quick background, I was a contracting officer at NAVSEA headquarters. Done different procurements from NATO Sea Spear missiles, assault defense missiles for the US and NATO consortium, counter IED procurement for Central Command Area, and submarine and sonar system. Spent about $3 billion of Navy money, and then went to Palantir as their head of government contracts. Helped to increase their revenue from 80 to 400 million over my 3 years there. That's background noise. And then went to as a board director and founded the U.S. office for a company called a UK company called Improbable. They do back-end gaming computation technology, and at Octave Ventures, we tend to come in at maybe late Series A, B, and C. Typically, we are stage agnostic. We tend to come in when it's kind of at the stage of everything's clicked in. There's customer validation, products ready, and they just need the capital to grow. Typical check size between $5 million to $50 million. Sweet spot around $10 to $20 million of check size. Great to meet everyone.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next up, we're gonna circle back around to Kip. Kip, can you speak now?
I can. Yes, I'm here as a panelist. So yeah, thanks for having me today. My name is Kip. I currently work with a venture fund called VU Venture Partners, which is a generalist investment fund. There's several different categories, including fintech and healthcare for investment focus areas. I focus a lot on the deep tech side. So we've invested a lot in areas like space or new types of mobility, computing, all kinds of different areas. I'm also really focused on sustainability and climate tech as well, and have been a part of a number of different accelerators and collaborating with climate tech organizations in the past. And then previously, for many years, helped develop an organization called Singularity University that was based in Silicon Valley and really focused on advanced technologies and helping leaders around the world and also startup companies develop new tech solutions for solving global challenges. So I've been in this area for quite a while, and happy to be here today. Thanks.
Beautiful, thank you. And then next, Jung from Coda Capital, if you want to reintroduce yourself. All right, I think he might have dropped off. That's fine. Chloe, unfortunately, cannot make it, but Ed, you want to quickly reintroduce yourself? Let's see if your mic is a little bit better.
There we go. I think
Perfect.
it's coming out, right? Okay, Ed Labrador. I'm one of 2 deputy directors of education for the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics in Region Portions Liaison Officer. My job is helping Eagle Point Funding and Department of Defense partners.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ed. And then last up, we have Kellen Shin from the Cincinnati Insurance Companies.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jialin Shen. I lead the innovation research team here at the Cincinnati Insurance Company. We are very interested in data analytics. We work with many insurtech partners. Because of the insurance specialty, we're also very interested in smart city models related to autonomous vehicle, urban planning, twin cities, all those kind of fun stuff. So very pleasure to be here.
Perfect. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you. All right. With that, we have introduced our panel. And first up for presenting companies is Carbon America. And presenting from Carbon America, we have Alex Clapton.
Yeah, thank you, Asher. Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, so I'm Alex Clapton. I'm a finance manager, and I help with commercial development at Carbon America. If you could hit the next slide, and we'll just kind of get into this here. So this is kind of a broad overview of the company in general. So our company was founded kind of the beginning of 2020 with seed money from a kind of a family office type investor. And the goal here was to create a vertically integrated super developer for carbon capture and sequestration projects, in addition to developing kind of an in-house tech as well. So we have two sides to the business. One is a technology agnostic project development company for CCS projects, and then kind of the other half of the company is our in-house technology under development. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick overview of kind of our current investors and partnerships. We did a Series A round last November and brought in $30 million with an additional $15 million in warrants that were exercised last month. So total size of $45 million. Canada Pension Plan led the round, and Energy Impact Partner, Arcturn Ventures, and the Grantham Foundation, in addition to Galway Sustainable Capital, came in as well. So we did actually bring in a new investor to complete the warrant exercise, and that's Builders Private Capital. It's a Walton family office. Next slide, please. So it's kind of a high level overview of the market and the problems and the challenges. So as we're all aware, there are too many greenhouse gas emissions, and we have to do something about that to keep climate change under control and to just make life better for everyone. So this is going to be a massive market. If you could go to the next slide. And this is kind of just a quick, short and dirty diagram of a carbon capture and sequestration project. So there's kind of three components to these things. There's the capture facility, so the carbon capture equipment located at the emission site. There's a transportation piece, whether that's pipeline, rail, barge, or truck, to get those emissions to the sequestration site. Our primary strategy here is to do permanent sequestration as opposed to enhanced oil recovery. We're not, entirely opposed to EOR, but we're focused on sequestration. Next slide, please. So the IRS and the federal government came out with a kind of an updated Section 45Q tax credit to facilitate this industry, if you will. So it's going to be a massive industry, as I said, and we're kind of on the leading front here. Next slide. So for the 45Q, this is what really makes these projects economic. As you can imagine, like, we're dumping the CO2 underground and no one's really paying for it. So right now, the 12-year, it's a 12-year tax credit priced at $50 per metric ton that is permanently sequestered. In order to really pull these projects off, you obviously have to have a large tax liability. So we pull in a tax equity investor. It's kind of similar to what happens in wind and solar. So a lot of the big banks, and big companies with massive tax bills can come in as a tax equity investor and make a pretty good return on these projects. Next slide, please. So this is just kind of quickly how we designed the kind of the DNA of a company that to meet this challenge. Next slide. So there's as we went over kind of the diagram of one of these projects, there's multiple components to these, and right now there's very few vertically integrated companies, and that's where we see us being a game changer. So we structured ourselves to be kind of an easy button for an emission source that wants to do a CCS project. They can push the Carbon America button and get the capture facility, the pipeline, the sequestration site built and permitted, and get the tax equity monetized to make the project work. So all of that, all of those components we have in-house at the company. Next slide. Next slide. So again, this is kind of another diagram of the process, if you will. Next slide. So this is kind of our strategy right now. So we're kind of in phase 1 of our strategy, and there's for those that are unfamiliar, that there are high purity emission sources of CO2, and there's existing technology on the market to do that, and it's cheap enough that it's economic. So enhanced oil recovery has been around for decades, and the equipment to capture the CO2 and dump it underground has been around for decades. So right now, kind of the target market for us is the ethanol industry, simply because it's a high purity source with readily available technology. And in addition to the 45Q tax credits and all the tax benefits of these projects, you can stack low carbon fuel standards revenue on top of the tax credit to make the project very economic. Our phase 2 is kind of pointing towards the low purity but high concentration CO2 emission sources. So something like a coal plant, a natural gas power plant, a steel plant, a cement plant, they emit CO2 as a small fraction of their total emissions, but it's in such high volumes that it's the total volume is much larger than those high purity projects. That being said, the technology for those low purity emitters is almost cost prohibitive right now to make a project work. And then of course, everyone's probably has heard of direct air capture. That's something we envision ourselves getting into in kind of phase 3. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is kind of a quick high level overview of some of our key individuals here. Next slide. And here's kind of our directors and advisors at the moment. Next slide. So this is we have a very robust subsurface team full of geologists that can analyze and find sequestration sites that everyone else misses. So there's a lot of technical analysis that goes into picking a sequestration site that is suitable and viable to handle the volumes you're going to dump in there, ensure it doesn't leak out in the future, et cetera. So we have a robust team here. Additionally, we have some regulatory and policy individuals integrated with that team that have done work with the EPA permitting Class 6 wells, which is a CO2 injection well. Next slide.
Right?
Okay. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so real quickly, since this is sort of a tech showcase, we have an in-house technology under development for flue gas emission sources. Right now modeled to be 1/2 to 1/3 the cost of the existing technology. It's a cryogenic based carbon capture technology as opposed to amine or sorbent. So it runs entirely off electric load. It's very non-invasive on installation at the emission source. And there's just a whole host of benefits outside the fact that it's just much cheaper. So we're running a test at the National Carbon Capture Center this summer. And coming out of that, we'll be getting into commercial operations. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, I'm ready for any questions if anyone has questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alex. I think there's one. I'll just start it off with the Q&A. What does carbon capture solutions do to the saline aquifer into which the carbon is injected?
Oh man. What does it do to the saline aquifer? I'd have to get one of the more technically minded people to give you a solid answer on that, but I do know saline aquifers are things we target to dump the CO2 into, and primarily because we obviously have to avoid any freshwater sources, U.S. drinking water sources. So saline aquifers are certainly a target for sequestration. Beyond that, what it does to the actual aquifer, my finance brain understanding is it just puts CO2 in there. So
Gotcha. And I'd like to ask the panelists if they want to ask questions, please turn on your video. But also, if you want to raise your hand, we'll go in the order in which the hands are raised on Zoom. So feel free.
I have thanks, Alex, for the presentation. I have a question about the phase one. So just to clarify, understanding, is that's working with existing plants that are already in operation? This is building new ones and then sequester that. Could you just walk through how the phase one works exactly?
Yeah. So our phase one is targeted towards existing high purity emission sources. So we're not building any new plants. You know, if someone else is building a new plant, we'd be happy to come in and help them with the CCS piece. But in-house at Carbon America, we're not building or buying the plant. We're partnering with the plant to create the CCS project, if you will. And from an ethanol plant's perspective, there's huge upside for them in a low carbon fuel standards market like California or British Columbia. So they're very incentivized to do something like this if they have a pathway to sell into one of those markets, because we end up reducing the CI score, the carbon intensity score, by about 30 points. Which is big money for them.
I see. And then those existing sites, they have to be at a location that also has a good sequestration point, so that it's matching the producers with where it can be sequestered, right?
Yeah, essentially. And there's different scenarios call for, how long can we build a pipeline before the project's not economic, So we have a few projects where the sequestration site's right next to the source. And we have a few, that we're looking at maybe a 60-mile pipeline. So it just kind of depends on essentially the size of the plant on how far you can extend a pipeline to get to a sink.
Okay, got it. All right, thanks.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alex. That's all the time we have for questions. Next up is Stat EI, and we have Gus. And excuse me if I mispronounce your last name, but we have Gus Domo presenting as co-founder and chief programs officer.
Hi, how you doing? Good day, and thank you for your time. It's Vidaurreta, and it's really funny. It's a Basque last name, and I didn't let my wife use it until she learned to pronounce it. It took like 10 years for her to get the last name, so it sounds like video rental. So anyway, StatEI is in the renewable energy business, but we are not really implementing or building green fields. We are really in the air. By the way, I can be heard, right? And seen? Okay, so we're really in the business of making it work better, making it more efficient and more resilient. Next. So our vision is we are an artificial intelligence-based software, combination of software packages and some hardware that has been built to actually make the renewable energy industry work, not only in the generation of the renewable energy, but also you'll see later in the EV, in the electronic vehicle space. Next. The problems for renewable energy are very simple. I mean, you turn on a nuclear power plant or a coal power plant, you know exactly how much electricity you're going to get. And the demand and the supply of electricity has to balance. When you go into green energy and you go solar, you go wind, there's unpredictability. You don't know how much you're going to get. You don't know how much you're going to be able to store. Therefore, whenever you use whenever you integrate these technologies to a regular grid, you always underestimate how much you're going to use it because you cannot overcommit. So we have some solutions that actually address this issue. Next. I said that we're also going to have the electric vehicle discussion briefly. Electric vehicles have a major problem. Charging is inconvenient, and there's a huge problem with range anxiety. I mean, people don't think that whenever they have an electronic vehicle, they have to have a gas vehicle for travel because they don't think they're going to be able to go far enough. Next. So StatEI was founded based on 7 patents that were created by Florida International University. And we have this license to these patents. People don't know, but Florida International University is a great patent producer. And very simply, there's 5 that deal with renewable energy, the first 5. And those are a predicting Rencast, allows you to predict how much sun or wind you're going to get in a period of a minute from now, a day from now, 5 days from now, with 95% accuracy. And that is because it was developed in conjunction with Nextera and using all of the Florida Power and Light data. So the system, which is a combination of AI and mathematical algorithms, has been fine-tuned like no other competitor has been able to fine-tune theirs. Then we have the Smart PLC, and the PLC, the controller, what it does is once you know how much generation of green energy you're going to have, and once you know how much you have already, because there's state of charge also, it tells you how the batteries are charged or not, then this PLC, also with artificial intelligence, looks at what are your priorities, what is your demand going to be, how much is going to be generated from the other sources of energy, and then it optimizes the use of the green energy. It can from any source. It can come from the batteries, it can come from the panels, it can come from a combination of the two, but it does that because it knows what is coming down the pike to do the predicting. So that makes it, the smart microgrids is actually a combination of these two technologies, or the three technologies, the predicting capabilities, the state of charge, and also the intelligent traffic cop, as I like to call it, that actually directs how the energy is going to be used. The PEACE system is a small, it's less than 100 kilowatt, and it was designed to replace the diesel generators that serve as backup to hospitals, stadiums, and so on. And the PEACE system also includes all the smart components. It also includes the predictor, and it also includes the PLC. Hope's controller is farther out down the line, but Hope's controller is another controller that creates a virtual power plant by connecting different power plants. As long as there is a transmission line, it connects them together, and it allows you to draw energy from really far away if you need it in a different place, and it actually balances the system very nicely. Hope's controller is being looked at a lot by the EV industry because there's lots of imbalances that take place when, let's say, 6 people buy Teslas that live next to each other. And then on the EV side, we have two technologies. One is static. You actually would pull in front of it. It's wireless. You will pull on top of it, and your vehicle will charge. And a very interesting one is dynamic, where you could have slow lanes in highways and so on, and charge as you go. You don't have to stop.
30-second warning, all right, Gus?
Okay. So as I said, we have, we're 97%, we have 10% savings on smart microgrids, 95% accuracy on Rencast. Everything is tested and available for review. We're in between 6 and 7 in state of readiness. Next. Traction, we have, partnerships that we have farmed. We have pilot contracts. We have raised funds. We're dealing right now with 2 of the largest energy generators, one in France and one in Mexico. We're presenting to the French group on the 31st. And we are dealing with one of the largest, or one of the newest luxury brands for EV charging that is interested in the technology. Next. We're seeking a $2 million investment. Right now, we have $750,000 of smart money that came in from somebody who's in the industry, was very much in love with the technologies, and we're looking to move forward and go ahead. And we should have everything ready, all the products ready by November, the end of November. Next. So that's a roadmap, and I think that I have the products realized $500,000 in revenue and grants. We have a bunch of grants out there that we'll be working on with Eagle Point. Finish all the products by the 31st of November, close sales ahead of the product competition. That's what we're doing on the 31st. And with working also with Pemex in Mexico, continue to add and develop new patented technologies. The university loves what we're doing, so they are actually wanting to give us more. And next year, we will be a $5 million company based on the contracts that we plan to close and the partnerships that we plan to create with the EV side.
Next, guys, let's start finishing up.
That's it. I'm done.
Perfect. Perfect. So with that, let's open it up to the panel. Yeah, feel free to go ahead. Whoever has the first question.
Thanks, Gus. I'll jump in again. What of all the different product areas you mentioned, what's the first one? Because there's a lot of different areas that probably all contribute in different ways, but what's the main thing you're going to anchor the business on as the first step?
Well, it's more of a solution. The technologies can be looked at independently, but when you put them together, it's a solution. So what I'm really anchoring the company is in the solution that makes microgrids smart. In other words, ability to predict, ability to know the state of charge, and ability to actually act as a traffic cop and optimize the use. However, if you ask me what's coming out first, the predictor is only a month away from being completed. So the predicting, because it's already being used at Florida International University, and they have a 3 megawatt grid that and for the School of Engineering, and it runs on its own. It's not on the grid anymore. It's being used there. The technology is working beautifully, but it doesn't have the layers. We have to create the cybersecurity, the user interface, in order to make it marketable. It's one thing working at a university working well, and the other one is actually being able to sell it.
Got it. Okay. Thanks. That's helpful.
Perfect. We have time for one last question. If anyone wants to, there might be one in the Q&A here, actually. I'm not sure if this is for you, but for the Smart PLC, what are your competitive differentiation versus the competition?
That's a very good question. It's been the way it's all artificial intelligence algorithms. So if anybody else has a smart PLC that can actually then act as a traffic cop and optimize the use of renewable energies, they're direct competitors. I mean, we know our predictor is better than what's out on the market, but we don't know that our PLC is. We know that it's very good, but we don't know if it's better.
Perfect. Thank you, Gus, and thank you for the presentation. That was Stat EI. Next up, we have Jeff Starin from Strata Sustainability.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, terrific. Thank you for the time, and thanks to the panelists, and thanks, Brian, for hosting here. I am talking to you from Nassau, Bahamas, which is where we're working currently, so it's not for fun, but I'm a little worried about the stability of my connection here, so I may turn off my video. Strata Sustainability is an environmental services company. We have historically been focused on waste recycling and composting, and primarily in emerging markets and small island developing states. And we're currently, for example, doing project management for remediations and larger municipal scale transformations of open dumps, turning them into ecology parks and resource recovery facilities in the Caribbean. And we're launching a new business line that's applicable to this idea of smart cities. So that's what I'm here talking to you about today. You can jump to the next slide, Brian. So this concept is born from our experience in the Latin American Caribbean region dealing with waste from resorts, private islands, and private communities that need to preserve their ecosystems. And that combined with our general belief in distributed systems for waste management and recycling, so decentralized, small scale sorting and processing as opposed to the traditional hub-based high volume facilities. So think of some of the neighborhood solar installations that are popping up that are, removed from the grid. And this is just a different utility that we're talking about in this case. So you can skip to the next one, Brian. So the product that we're talking about is effectively a mini material recovery facility. And we like to use the term microecology park, like the recycling center you might find in a larger metro area, but on a tiny scale with the goal of, bringing facilities to as close to zero waste as possible. And in the process of that, reducing carbon footprint, as I said, getting to zero landfill export and being safe and sustainable. And again, this is originally designed for resorts and hotels. So that's why some of the language here speaks to guest and staff safety, but it would apply to any sort of small system that this would apply to. the system relies, and this kind of evokes that, but the system relies on circularity. So the cost of doing intensive sorting and recycling is offset by the value of the products that result, but those products are not just the sort of traditionally understood sale of things like aluminum and plastics, but it's other assets that are created in the system as well, which I'll get to later, but such as the carbon footprint reduction, and some other benefits that impact financially as well as environmentally. Next one, Brian. So this is a rendering of what one of these little microecology parks looks like, or MEP. The whole facility is designed with a limited footprint in multiple senses of that word. It is specifically designed out of a series of modified ISO containers, which makes it pretty easy to construct and malleable for different circumstances. It has a carport style roof with solar panels on top so that it is self-sufficient energy-wise. And it's meant to look good on purpose because it's an outward-facing thing. It's presentable. It's not just available, but welcoming of public interaction and understanding. Next, Brian. Next slide. So here we can see the basic elements comprising the facility. Low-speed, high-torque shredders are at the heart of it, which sit under that carport. Inbound materials are sorted manually on a custom piece of sorting equipment. They're segregated into commodities. All those commodities are shredded. Recyclables go to a certain place. Organics go into composting, which is something we're big into and is a big part of this system. That could be a variety of methodologies like aerated static pile, in vessel, or turn windrow. Right here we're showing windrow, but and then there is an incinerator there it's a controlled air thermal oxidizer for anything that is particularly challenging, but that is a very small unit, and just about everything else is handled is recovered aside from that. Skip ahead to the next one, please, Brian. This facility that you're looking at is equipped to handle up to as much as 20 tons a day, which is actually quite a lot. So think 7,000 to 8,000 tons per year, but also designed to be as small as 1 ton per day. As I touched on earlier, the outputs to the resort or the community or the town, as these applications might be amenable to, are not just revenues from the sale of, say, aluminum and plastics, but also for soil amendments that create healthier soils, which mean more water retention, which means less water consumption. And if you're thinking about the environments that we've historically been working in, you're talking about water generated through RO plants at a cost of 50 cents per kilowatt hour. You're talking about the ability to process concrete into aggregates for on-site structural fill. There is a biodiesel plant that I didn't mention that is on this facility to take waste cooking oil. There's a biochar can be made on site. So again, it's taking all these materials and finding the value of them. Next slide.
30-second warning.
Okay. So this is also designed as a sort of micro-sized clean energy hub. Again, it all runs on solar, but it's a low power draw for the equipment. So it envisions the resort or the city drawing on some of that power for its electric vehicles, and also the biofuel, as I mentioned. Next slide. So again, this started, for resorts and hotels and private island communities, but its applications could be for cruise lines, for military bases, for national parks, for ports, small towns, anybody who's looking to get towards zero landfill and also achieve these other benefits of carbon footprint reduction. Again, these outputs that I'm talking about, not just selling your recyclables, but savings on soil and fertilizer, saving on water by making healthier soils out of your compost, and introducing the compost that we create on the facility right back into the facility itself, and creating better soil aggregates and creating, carbon sink with better, healthier soil. Next slide. So again, as I mentioned, this relies on circularity. It doesn't pay back just to grab the plastic and sell it. We've got to, there's some intensive sorting that happens here. So we've got to get all of these value propositions out of it. Last slide, or next slide. So just in closing, what you're looking at here is past, current, and future images of the project that we're currently working on here in the Bahamas. And it is a sort of a larger scale version of what we're talking about, but we're taking a massive 300-acre open burning dump. We've closed it. We're recovering resources from it, and we're going to put those resources back into the facility to create value-added projects, products, and reduce input in the landfill and all the benefits that come from that. So with that, I say thank you, and I'll take any questions. And that's me.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. All right, open the floor up.
All right, I will jump in again. Thank you for the presentation. Beautiful slides. Of course, the locations where you're working, make that nice. In the Bahamas. Any
It's
deck
helpful.
designed with pictures from the Bahamas is gonna look nice. I feel like.
Right.
Who's it? What kinds of customers have shown them the most interest so far? Who are you working with now? And it looked like there's a lot of future potential categories and groups, but where's you found the most traction and the most interest so far?
The most traction so far has definitely been with resorts and private island communities, of which there are more than most people might imagine in the Caribbean, especially that I'm aware of, and certainly in other parts of the world. But yeah, we get high traction from there because, again, right now their options are barging waste at a huge cost, or throwing it in open, and frequently barging it to an open pit dump where it's causing harm to the environment. So you've got, folks that are high real estate value and have some environmental ethos, but, it goes out the door at pretty high cost and, both financially and environmentally. So
what makes sense. What percentage of waste reduction? So let's say there's a barge of trash that has to get shipped out somewhere. What percentage of that, maybe you had it in the deck, but what percentage can go through that cycle like that?
95% ultimately. Wow. Now, in fairness, this does rely on an element of education and cooperation with the folks you're working with. I mean, they have to adopt certain practices, that are upstream of us, but they're pretty limited. We don't have a lot of asks of them in that regard. But like single-use plastics, for example, we're going to work with them to switch those into something that's compostable if possible. That's as an example.
Very cool. That's great. Yeah, I'll see if anyone else has any other questions. But sounds like a fun role to do to go to tropical islands and install the.
There are worse places to have to go. I live in Seattle, Washington, most of the time, so it's a little better down here, weather-wise at least.
Yeah.
It looks like someone had one question. I'm not sure how you'd answer it, but do you provide life cycle management services?
I'm not sure exactly what is meant by that.
Exactly. That's why I wasn't 100% sure. It's in the Q&A.
I mean, we do. Well, I'll say this though. I mean, this is not just construction of the facility, but is also operation. This is a service. This is a service that we're providing, not just installing something and walking away, if that's what you mean. So we are operating the facility, and we are working with the client to deploy those outputs that I discussed. So, application of compost into farms, if that's what you want to do, or, if you have on your property, or if it's just your grassland and we're doing top dressing of compost to make richer soil, things like that. We will work with the client on all of that, but I don't know if that answers the question.
Sure. No, I think that's good. And so if there's no other questions, I think we're pretty much out of time anyway. So next up, thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we have Michael Pickles, founder and CTO of MagWorks Vision. The floor is yours, and let me just allow you to share. You should be good to go now, Michael.
Go ahead, you have it. Please share the presentation on your end, if you don't mind. So you have it handy?
Yeah, I can pull it out.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to present, introduce MagWorks Vision. We are a vehicle lighting company that specializes in the electric vehicles and mobility applications. Unlike the traditional lighting companies that cater to the major automotive manufacturers throughout the world. So since the presentation is up, I will give you some background. There we go. So once again, thanks for the opportunity. Next slide, please. So let me identify the problem. So mobility introduces a new, unique vehicle lighting challenges. The mobility revolution we're experiencing currently, there are multiple new vehicle types which require highly efficient, robust lighting, which meets all applicable government regulations. Even if you don't have a driver in the vehicle, it must meet applicable vehicle regulations throughout the world. Large number of new vehicles and manufacturers are entering the marketplace, while at the same time there's far fewer vehicle lighting suppliers to address these rapidly growing needs. It's a major imbalance that most people are simply not aware of. What is required are novel, eco-friendly, highly energy efficient, ultra lightweight, robust, durable, and custom designed vehicle lighting technology and products. Next slide, please. So EVs and mobility applications require modern, energy efficient, durable technologies, which are just not readily available. Standard off-the-shelf products no longer meet the needs of the mobility manufacturers, which are emerging at a very rapid pace. The market requires specific, bespoke, that is custom designs with higher performance and durability. Next slide, please. And it's truly not a simple problem. While simple LED lighting, such as a flood lamp or no-flood lamps, are rather simple to execute, to develop and put into market, advanced, highly controlled vehicle illumination, such as headlights and taillights, are precisely the opposite, requiring high levels of expertise in optical design, materials, thermodynamics, electronics, along with a keen know-how of all applicable worldwide regulations, which are many and very stringent. So outside the traditional automotive OEM lighting tier 1 suppliers, which are focused on high volume vehicle applications, there are truly very few remaining independent lighting suppliers with the required expertise and technology to address the rapidly expanding mobility market. Next slide, please. So technology and know-how. MagWorks Vision brings automotive tier 1 levels of competence, product design, and regulatory know-how to the rapidly expanding mobility sector. We introduce unique, ultra lightweight, highly energy efficient, environmentally friendly technologies, unlike all the products currently in the market. Proprietary magnesium and optical silicon solutions, which we have developed, address both current as well as future environmental requirements, once again, unlike any other lighting supplier. Provides superior robustness, significant lowering energy consumption, along with major illumination performance improvement, both simultaneously. Next slide, please. This is our patent portfolio in the innovations that we have brought to the markets in the area of fixed molding magnesium construction, which is magnesium injection molding, structure headlamp, as well as optical silicon domains. Next slide, please. So we bring truly stunning simplicity advantages through technologies that deliver essentially brighter, smaller, lighter, simpler, significantly more robust, and with major efficiency improvements vis-a-vis other LED lighting products in the marketplace currently. Next slide, please. So here's an example of a clear technology advantage. So on the upper right, you see a very modern lamp that just went into the marketplace, an original design of a rear backup fog lamp combination, which you see as its traditional internal heat sink and inside a plastic lamp housing. That's how most lamps are done to date. The design requires multiple printed circuit boards, wire harnesses, jumpers, and the like. So small yet quite complex. Our redesign, where we employ our thick molded magnesium technology, eliminates a separate heatsink, employs a single board, PCB board, and eliminates separate wire harnesses. But just as important, we reduce the mass of the lamp by a rather significant 43%. Next slide, please. So an example of our current activities. Here's a vehicle that will enter the market towards the end of this calendar year. We're currently developing the entirety of the vehicle exterior lighting package, headlights, taillights, and everything else, as you can see in this slide, as well as the rear port charge port license plate holder, which will be made from magnesium for lightweight and efficiency. There are 9 different lamp types we're developing and 16 lamps altogether. Next slide, please. So here's to give you an example of the competitive landscape analysis. This chart illustrates in the bottom side, the bottom part, the traditional OEM automotive lighting suppliers and an industry that in North America and Europe already exceeds $32 billion in annual turnover. We, on the other hand, our area of activity is the upper segment of this chart. As you can see, only 6 companies in North America, and 3 of them are actually specialized in the heavy-duty truck and trailer market, which is truly different from what is required for mobility applications. That market is already well in excess of $1 billion and growing very rapidly. Next slide, please. So our ask, industry and government partners with vehicle lighting challenges and connections with automotive and vehicle engineers working in high reliability applications. Next slide, please. So our expertise, we're a relatively new company. We've been around a year and a half, yet our senior staff comprises over 100 years of specific automotive lighting expertise. So we're a highly experienced company with a wealth of technology and know-how. And with that, the last slide, please. With that, thank you for the opportunity to introduce MagWorks' vision and welcome any questions on your part. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah. And if there's no hands raised yet, I think I have a question, and it might be a little bit of a doozy. So my question is would it from my experience with OEMs, aren't they doing a lot of this in-house? What's your plan to break into that somewhat difficult market?
No, actually, no OEM in the world does lighting in-house. They're all provided by exterior lighting tier 1 suppliers. There's no such a thing. It's been traditionally that way, and it remains to this day. So that's really one of the challenges, is that most people don't realize the difficulty of implementing lighting. The assumption is like you see lighting everywhere, and therefore it must be readily attainable. And the answer is it's not, because the lights you see on existing vehicles are developed by tier 1, as they're referring in industry, lighting suppliers, which just specialize in high volume applications. And that's a major problem for the low volume mobility entrance, in that those companies are just simply not set up. I spent my entire career within that field. I know it quite well.
Got it.
So the issue is that if you don't have legal lighting, you don't have a vehicle you can sell. So it's very easy for somebody to put, let's say, a shuttle, an EV of any kind. Of course, if it's off-road, it's not an issue. But if it's on-road, in mobility in cities, it must meet all applicable regulatory requirements. And lighting is a highly regulated area. You don't have that, you don't have a sellable vehicle. It's that simple. And and I can attest, based on my experience, that most companies have no clue that they have such a problem. So, and it's not as simple. Many of them resort, for instance, to buy some off-the-shelf products, as I stated in my presentation, which are available. Problem is that as more and more companies enter the market, the demand exceeds the supply. So you end up with a situation just like with chips or plastics or other materials that are in short supply. So what happens when you can't get your lights? It's quite simple and answer easy. Cannot sell the vehicle.
And I'm sure also, I mean, also on top of that, I'm sure that the off-the-shelf isn't necessarily custom designed. So it's probably a one-size-fits-all for all vehicles, which isn't necessarily the best thing.
I have plenty of slides to show you vehicles around the world with round lamps. Precisely, that's what they can buy off the shelf. And when you're building, again, a handful of prototypes to demonstrate your vehicles is one thing, but when you try to put them into production, it's entirely another. It's also a matter that they're not inexpensive. Those products, by the time you add up, end up costing you far more than if you design a vehicle-specific application. So yes, there's no investment, but then you find out at the end of the day, it costs you much, much more. And you don't have the flexibility associated with custom design products. And the problem is that designing products which have to meet specific government regulations, if you don't know what you're doing, it is as close to a nightmare as it can get.
Oh, I'm sure the recalls and pulling vehicles off roads is not.
GM is now facing a 700,000 vehicle recall because they made one silly little mistake on not themselves necessarily, their supplier, and there's what is called glare. The articles say that the headlights are too bright. They're not too bright. They're actually not that bright at all, but they failed a test point. And GM is going to eat 700,000 vehicles recall. It's going to be billions.
So in a situation like that, would the OEMs switch providers for like a mistake like that, or would it be different?
Well, they already had the fix.
Okay.
Actually, the fix was very simple. The problem is it's very costly because you have to replace the entire lamp. And it's not just the lamp cost, it's also the dealer cost, right? So the dealers have tables and they say, okay, OEM, it says right here, it's going to take 10 hours to replace this, and this is the hourly rate. And that's all there is to it.
Sure. We have time for one last question. If someone wants to take the last crack.
Yeah, Michael, it looks like a really important area you're working on for the future mobility. What kinds of initial vehicles are you designing lights for? You said that the first one is going to be later this year. I'm just curious if these are
correct. We're a fairly new company. We're trying to ensure that we don't take too many programs all at once and exceed our ability to ensure that they get delivered properly. But we're developing already 9 different types of lamps for the Aptera, headlights, taillights, every single exterior lamp. And we've been asked to do some interior lamps as well, which we're doing. The problem that you have, for instance, in a 3-wheeler is that once again, regulations are what they are, and they're different from cars. And there's no 3-wheel manufacturers that knew that, and they were doing the headlights like a car, and we told them they won't pass regulations. And when they looked into it, they realized that we were right. And if you put something that's illegal, the government is relentless. They will not let you sell them. They will make you recall or stop sale, which can be absolutely disastrous for any kind of manufacturer. So it's something that's overlooked because the assumption is that everybody has taillights, everybody has headlights. How difficult could it be? If you're a large OEM, it's one thing. If you're a small entrant into the mobility market, it's an entirely different situation. And that's we want to participate in the market. We're set up to address low volume applications as opposed to the major tier ones addressing high volume applications. And it's an entirely different model. You cannot switch from one to the other in any practical manner.
Got it. Thanks. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for your question.
Yeah.
Perfect. With that, guys, we are all out of time. Thank you so much, Michael. That was MagWorks. If anyone wants to connect with any of the founders that presented today, feel free to reach out to the Deep Tech team. I'm going to drop my email into the chat. Also, if you guys want to network amongst yourselves, feel free. We're not going to stop that either. But it was a pleasure having everyone. And thank you to all the companies and all the panelists who have joined us today. It has been a fantastic event, and I hope to see you next month. We are hosting a third wave of AI event. Hope to see you all there. Have a good rest of your day, and stay in touch, everyone.
All right. Thanks for organizing. Bye, everyone. Have a great
Thank
rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.